everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Amanda Ostrander. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and this is Raising A to Z, a place where we talk about all things homeschooling. And today I'm going to answer the question, how and why I started homeschooling. I get asked this question of how we get started homeschooling frequently. I think it is a common question for homeschoolers. People are always surprised when you pick an alternative life than what they expect and assume. So they always got questions. But people are often more surprised to find out that I am a trained teacher, certified teacher who opted to homeschool my kids. And then even more surprised that we come from a fairly long line of educators. My husband is a teacher. Both my in-laws are teachers. My mom was an EA in special ed. And we're all cool with the homeschooling thing. So how did we get there is often the question. And so I thought I would kind of tell my story today. It's been a while since I've shared what led us to homeschooling. And there's a lot of new friends here, a lot of new subscribers. There's over 7,000 of you guys now. So I thought I would kind of explain our journey, kind of tell you our story of our journey today. So we had Alexi in 2015. Zoe was born in 2017. They are 22 months apart. So 2 under 2. And that was no joke. That was a very interesting time. A lot of sleepless nights, but that's okay. And we were kind of getting to the age where Alexi was needing, Zoe was a newborn, she was still tiny, but Alexi was needing more like stimulation. She wanted to do things. And so we had, since she was very, very young, like I'm talking 6 weeks old, we had been going to a kind of a playgroup co-op kind of thing at our church. It was great. She thrived there. She loved it. We joke around that she taught the pastor a few things because Lexi liked to organize, and she would come in and tell the pastor where things were supposed to be. And we had to work on that for a little bit, but very strong-willed, had a lot of things going for her. I had a brand new baby. And we were starting to think of like, okay, in 2 years, she would be going to kindergarten. And so we were going to Playgroup. We started attending it was like I don't know what it was called, but it was a French introduction program, even though we were French speaking. The local, how do I explain this? It was a weird program, but it was essentially like a drop-in program twice a week at a French Catholic school that was like around the corner. And the point of the program was we would come in and they would work with families who were going to be coming to a French Catholic school and who would be maybe not the most fluent in French. So my husband's quite fluent. I understand it to speak it. My reading and writing is not great, even though I did do it all the way through most of high school and stuff. But like that's the point of the program, is for parents who want to send their kids who maybe aren't fully French or fully fluent, and to kind of introduce the kids. So there'd be like a vocabulary, like every week had a theme, and it would be like, let's say it was farm this week, and they would do like a farm themed vocabulary. There'd be a farm themed game. They would have a farm themed craft time. They would go do a little gym run around time. And it was run by an ECE, and it was great. I'm not knocking the program. It was a lot of fun. It was like 2 hours. I think it was, I don't even remember what it was like 2 hours once a week that we went. I think they had it twice a week, but we only went once a week. And it was great. It was free. We loved it. It was great. But as we were doing this program, I remember like talking about things like, asking the instructor, like, so like, when do you introduce like letters here? And like, what about like spelling their name? And she's like, oh, we don't do that. I was like, what do you mean? And she started telling me how like in her program, she's specifically not allowed to teach the kids how to spell their name. And she's not allowed to teach the kids letters. She's allowed to teach them numbers a little bit, like how to count, but not how to write them. And I was like, well, that's kind of strange because the program goes up from like 2 until 4 or 5. Like that's the age range for the program. And she goes, yeah, I'm not allowed. And I said, well, why not? And she goes, well, because some parents were getting upset that the kids who came out of the program knew how to spell their names, and it put their kids at a disadvantage. So it would upset them that their kids weren't doing as well in school. And so we had to like level the playing field. So we're not allowed to do that anymore. And that was one of the strangest things to me. And it was one of the things that got me thinking, maybe this isn't what I want for my kids. And I say that because I had already had a few experiences that had me questioning a few things. I had done my teacher's college with, as they were introducing the play-based kindergarten program, which is what they currently teach here in Ontario. And so like, it was just rolling out. Like, I was graduating and the next year it was going to be 100%. So like, I think the 2 or 3 years prior, it was like a rollout program. And then the next year was going to be 100%. All elementary schools were going to have this full day play-based learning kindergarten program. And so when I was doing my teacher's college, this was like a big push. And because I was elementary, this was like a huge thing. This is what we're doing. Let's work on this. Let's explain it so that when you guys go out, you are fully trained to do this, because not all the teachers were. And so I remember doing the training and thinking like, this is kind of strange. Like, I always felt there was a few things lacking, because and like I said, I was going into classrooms and I was seeing it. My final placement was in a classroom that was on the cusp of becoming a play-based kindergarten. So the teacher was using it as a play-based kindergarten partially, like it wasn't a full-time play-based kindergarten. And I was like, this is just a lot. So essentially, from my experience, there's circle times throughout the day where the kids come and kind of sit and gather and they discuss what they've been doing throughout the day. But only 2 to 3 times a week are they allowed to sit down, and the teacher's allowed to give direct instruction of like, this is how we write a letter A. This is how we do this. This is how we do that. Like, whatever they wanted to teach, they can only do it twice a week in terms of direct instruction. And the idea was, if you put out enough centers and enough things, the kids will become interested in it, and they'll become interested. And if, that will spark their learning, and then you can like introduce like, oh, we have like new pens in the writing station today. Maybe they'll go over and they'll start writing, and you can have like some cards of fun words that are on theme, and maybe they'll write them down. And it was very much like under the assumption that kids would want to do that and would be interested in that. And here's the thing. Some will. Alexi probably would have. But I had also sat in a class and tried to teach a kid who just wanted to play cars all day. And we did everything. And because we weren't really allowed to say no, we weren't allowed to take the cars away. Me and this teacher, who was like my placement teacher at the time, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And she's like, this is what it is. This is how we do it. I'm like, but anyway, what we had to do was we would take the cars away at night, because we weren't allowed to do it during the day. So after everyone left at the end of the day, we would come into the class and we'd have to reset the whole class, which is chaos. You'd reset the whole class, put out new centers and new things based off of what we had done that day, hoping to like spark the conversation of what happened, and so that we could talk about things and whatever. And then they're like, okay, so we don't want them playing with the cars, so we're going to take the cars away and that'll fix it. Well, a kid came in the next day and all of a sudden a block was a car, and he played cars with a block. And so we had to take the blocks away. And then the next day because like that's all he would do. He would not count. He would not read. He would not look at books about cars. Like, he just wanted to play cars. And I was like, this is chaos. Like, we're changing the class every day to accommodate one kid who wants to play cars. And doesn't matter what we're doing, he's still playing cars. And because we can't direct him to any center and tell him, okay, you're done here, go play over here, because we weren't allowed to do that unless they were being like damaging, or like even then that was kind of a no-no. It was just a lot. And I just felt like, well, what if you have that kid? How is this benefiting that kid who's just playing cars all day? And then the other thing that I had seen was the teachers they're like, well, I'm like, well, so how do you teach a concept? And they're like, oh, we'll show you how we teach a concept. And they had one of their, like what they said was their top students, kids who were kind of a little more advanced than the other. And they would pull out, like, let's say they had the activity that I was watching, which was a muffin tray. And they had all these different pom-poms. And so they're saying, let's look at the different ways we can sort the pom-poms. We can sort them by size. We can sort them by color. We can sort them. Some of them were sparkly and they weren't. And putting them into different things, like making different piles, right? That's essentially what it was. And I was like, oh, okay, so he learned how to sort because you showed him how to do that. And she's like, yeah. Like, so how did the other kids learn the concept of sorting by attribute, which is essentially the math lesson. It was like things have attributes and they can be sorted according to those. And I was like, so how do the other kids learn it? And the teacher's like, well, he's going to show them. And I was like, excuse me? What do you mean he's going to show them? And so then she goes, okay, go show your friends. And he would like run off and with his little little muffin tray and his pom-poms and be like, look what I can do. And like sort the pom-poms and try to get his friends to sort the pom-poms. And I said, I just want to clarify that our plan for teaching sorting is that we're going to send one kid off in a class of, I want to make this clear, there was 38 kindergartens in this classroom. 38 4-year-olds in this classroom. 4 and 5-year-olds. But still, 38 of them. 2 adults, 38 kids. And our hope is that he teaches enough of them and that they're interested enough that they'll learn it. She goes, oh yeah, and then we'll discuss it at one of our circle times after lunch. Okay, but what if the kids are just like, yeah, we don't care. She's like, oh, they'll care. I'm like, but what if they don't? She's like, they will. I'm like, okay, but what if they don't? She's like, well, then they'll figure it out in grade 1. So I had already had some suspicions that maybe this was not the right path that I wanted to go down. And these all kind of started to really get me thinking that I really didn't want to do the play-based kindergarten. So that was my thing. Our original plan when we started homeschooling was that our kids were going to stay home for kindergarten and go to school in grade 1. And that was the plan. Also, I thought that they would transition better. That was another thing that I saw a lot of was kids in first grade having a difficult time transitioning to a regular school program where they had to sit in a desk and do things because they spent 2 years going to school and playing all day. And all of a sudden they go to school in grade 1 and they don't play. They're sitting in a desk most of the day. And so that I saw a lot of kids having a lot of behavioral issues. Kids were very far behind because they spent so much time playing and there was no direct instruction of any kind. So I said, we'll skip the whole kindergarten. We'll send them to school in grade 1. We'll just do kindergarten at home. That'll be fine. That was the original plan. That did not work. So our problem became, especially with Alexi, was that she got too advanced too quickly. With a little bit of instruction, Alexi, by the end of kindergarten, had finished, because kindergarten here is 2 years. By the end of the first year of kindergarten, she was already done everything she needed to do for the whole kindergarten program and was starting to work on grade 1 stuff, especially in math. She was reading small words. She was able to do like a lot of addition, subtraction. She was measuring things. I was like, we are kind of like we're past where we need to be. And so then the next plan was we would just kind of do maybe up to grade 3. And so that was the next kind of like goal. But once we kind of accepted that maybe homeschooling was going to be our future for a little bit longer, it definitely became more of a lifestyle. Like by the end of like senior kindergarten for Alexi, we kind of had already suspected this might be a longer haul thing for our family. And that maybe this was not going to be, a 2-3 year program and then we'd be done. And that's exactly what it became. And I will say that our homeschooling changed once we kind of accepted that. It became a lot more relaxed. It became a lot more, I let the kids have a lot more say in what we did. And I think that actually worked out in our benefit. Like we were doing a lot of child-led stuff that they were picking our topics in that sense, but they were doing their math 1 to 2 years ahead of where their counterparts were. They were reading books that were far more difficult than what they were doing in schools. We were talking about how a lot of schools don't even read a full novel every year because the kids just can't get through it. So they're reading like excerpts or small stories or things like that nowadays. And my kids are reading 7 or 8 novels. Like that, we do 7 or 8 novel studies a year. And most schools aren't getting through one. And that doesn't include what they're doing on their own. Like Alexi is reading, 4 novels a month on her own. So it became apparent that maybe homeschooling was going to be our path. And once we kind of accepted that, once Alexi was kind of like going into grade 1, our lives kind of changed a lot. I find at that point we became much more devoted to building homeschooling as a lifestyle for us, and everything is learning. And once we kind of accepted that, we started finding our groove as homeschoolers. And that is when we really embraced our lives as homeschoolers and what that was going to look like. And that's when we started doing things like finding more classes, building community. Because up until that point, like we just, they did their weekly gymnastics and they saw their cousins. They were fine. But until once we got to that point, we're like, oh, this is going to be a long haul thing. We kind of need to figure out a few things here. And once we did, we've never looked back. So yeah, we just kept going. we let it, that's what happened. And that's where we're at. We don't have a plan at this point of how long this is going to happen and how long we're going to homeschool. Most likely until the end of 8th grade for both kids at the very least. We kind of go back and forth of what high school will look like for them. But then again, we got some time. We got a lot of time actually. And Alexi's in 4th grade, so she's got 4 or 5 years before we even need to start making those thought processes. So this is what we're doing. We're homeschooling our kids. They're happy. We enjoy it. I will say I do find some really cool benefits of homeschooling. The benefits that came from homeschooling that I wasn't expecting ended up being things like we just have so much more creative time. Our kids' typical school day takes about 2 hours, and then they're off doing what they want to do. So we're spending, we have co-op days and we do like homeschool classes, but then we also have a lot of time to do their own creative thing or their own like independent learning. So Alexi's always writing stories or making movies. Zoe is super into clay. Like she's a super good little sculptor for her age. And so those are things that they're doing kind of all the time. And once we kind of embrace that this is a lifestyle rather than just like we're just getting through it for now, that became a much more bigger focus and something that we encouraged more, if that makes sense. I also like that learning is a little more relaxed for us, where I find like in the school system, it's just like there's a test, there's a goal, there's a schedule, there's just so much that needs to happen. And there's all these things that are making it difficult, whether it is, assembly days, snow days, kids going on tournaments, people being sick. Like there's so many things that make sticking to a schedule like the school system has really difficult. And it just adds a level of stress to learning that I don't think should exist. And we don't do that. If our kids are sick one day, we just take the day off and we just pick up the next day, which if you think about it is kind of how life works. Like for most people, if you're sick, you call in sick and you're like, hey, I can't come in today, I'm sick. And they're like, okay, see you tomorrow if you're feeling better. And then the next day you just kind of like start where you were left off. And yeah, you might be like, oh, I missed a couple extra emails and go through those. But like for the most part, your day is, for most jobs, you don't have to like make up for it. You just kind of pick it up the next day. And so, that's kind of how our lives are. Like we just keep trucking along. Every day has a learning opportunity. Every day we're doing a little bit of something, and that's just what we do. It's a lot less stress, which I think my kids benefit from. I love that we can follow their interests. I can love that we can customize their education. I love that we can follow their strengths and their weaknesses. So if they have a really good strength, we can run with it. If there's a weakness, we're not bound to a time constraint of like working on something. We can come back to something multiple times. We can work on something multiple times. if it takes us a little longer to learn a skill, we don't penalize the kids for that. Zoe has a little bit of a harder time reading. That's okay. She's not being like thrown into intervention programs or she's taken out of art class or missing gym time to do extra reading. She just does extra reading with mom before bed. Like it just works into life so much easier. And that's something that we really appreciate about homeschooling that I just I didn't know before we started. And I love it. And then the whole friends thing is something I never, ever would have imagined when I started homeschooling. When I started homeschooling, I was like, oh yeah, like I wasn't worried about the socialization. That was something that I was like, that's not real. But I wasn't worried about it. But something that I wasn't expecting was what friends were going to look like for my kids versus what friends look like for public school kids. And what I mean by that is like, so for example, I have nieces and nephews who are in the public school system, and all of their friends are the kids who are in their class who are the exact same age as them. My kids, none of their friends are very few of their friends are the same age as them. Alexi has friends who are, 2 or 3 years older. She's got a friend who's a year younger. Same thing with Zoe. Zoe's got friends that are kind of all the way up to like some of Alexi's friends. She's got friends who are much younger, and they just all play together all the time. Like it's just, there's no age bracket. And because they're just so much more used to playing with a wider range of kids. So sometimes they're like, oh yeah, what we want to do isn't going to work because the little kids don't get it. So we're going to simplify it. Sometimes the little kids are learning from the big kids of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't scream at people today because they won't like that and they'll tell us off. Like they're learning things from each other all the time. But they're just so used to playing with a wide variety of kids and of ages. Whereas I find public school kids get really offended at a certain age. Like I have some of my nieces and nephews will not play with a younger kid because like they're a baby. They're in kindergarten. Why would I play with them? That's weird. Because in schools, they're segregated by age. That's a big separation. Like the kindergartners play by themselves. Kids grade 1 to 3 play together. Grade 4, 5, 6 plays in this section. 7 and 8 plays over there. Like it's very separated because of safety issues, I'm told. I don't know about that, but when we are homeschooling, we don't see that. And that's kind of cool because they're just used to playing with a much broader range of kids and they adapt to that. The last interesting thing I wasn't expecting when we started our homeschooling journey was the family dynamics of it. Because our kids are together all the time, yes, they do fight. Let me start with that. But because they're together all the time, they understand each other a lot more because they're a lot closer. So like, because they play together, they like, oh, like understands like, oh, Zoe's kind of done with me. She's a little annoyed. I'm going to back off. Or, you know what? We're having this little fight. You know what? Let's find something else to do for a little while and we'll come back. Like they've learned to work out their personality differences and their like little kinks a little bit better than I find some public school kid families because they spend so much time together. And when public school kids come home, they don't get to spend a ton of time with their siblings. So like when they're annoyed with each other, they don't have the time to work it out. And so that's a really interesting thing I wasn't anticipating with public school kids versus homeschool kids. I wasn't ready for that. But I love it because our kids, and I will say this this is not just me. This is a common discussion we have in like at co-op and stuff is that like, yes, our kids do bicker and they do fight and they do annoy each other. Like that's fine, but it's not to the same degree that their cousins do or their nieces or nephews do. Like they're at each other all the time. And it says because they don't know each other well enough to like hang out. Like it's an interesting dynamic and I appreciate having the time and being able to focus and foster that in our home because it really does make raising kids a much more pleasant experience, in my opinion. But those are just things that we've noticed. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that's what I've noticed. But anyway, that's how I, a teacher, ended up homeschooling my kids. If you guys have a cool story, I'd love to hear it. Please share it down below. I hope this inspires you guys that there's a lot of educational options out there, and that if you're not happy with something, you don't have to do it. You can definitely find the educational program that works for your family, and there are some really cool benefits when you do. So thank you so much for watching. Consider becoming a member of our Happy Homeschooler family here, and you get some really cool bonuses. You get free content, you get extra videos, early releases. I send you coupons. Sometimes I send you little gifts, lots of cool stuff. And you can also make sure you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.